Mala Yusho, can you hear me? Hello? It seems like he's frozen. So can we just go straight to Halima Wali before he's able to join us again? Can you please introduce yourself to us?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here and to meet everybody. As Hawa said, my name is Halima Wali. And in a nutshell, I'm a teacher, a researcher, and an advocate for girls and women's education. I'm currently doing my PhD on girls' education in Northern Nigeria at Queen's University in Canada. And I also work with 1 Million Teachers, which is an organization that works with communities that are under-resourced and underserved to promote quality education for children through teacher professional development. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us today in this important discussion, Halima Wali. We appreciate your presence and we appreciate whatever value you are going to bring that will enrich this discussion. Thank you. Ramatu Umar Bago, can you please introduce yourself?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ramatu Umar Bako. I'm a lawyer by profession, but I work in international development. I currently work with Oxfam as the head of influencing, advocacy, and public engagement here in Nigeria. And I'm a development expert. My expertise is in stakeholder management, gender equality, diversity, and advocacy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us, Ramatu Umar. We appreciate your coming to this. Just give me a moment. I had no idea while I was trying to. Okay, thank you very much for that observation. I had no idea that while I was trying to. Can you hear me now? Okay, while I was get my audio on, I forgot about the headphones. So I hope I'm more audible and clearer now. Thank you very much, Ramatu, for joining us. We appreciate you and whatever value you're going to bring into this conversation. Mala Yusho has joined us back. Mala Yusho, are you with us now? Hello? Yes, we lost you earlier on, but we can't hear you. Can you please?
Yes. Do you hear me?
All right. Yes, we can.
I hope you hear me now, right?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you very much for.
Thank you.
Yes, we lost you earlier on. Thank you for joining us. Can you please introduce yourself to us?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Sheroes Rising. I'm a peer practitioner. Writing actually is my hobby. PR is my profession. And to some extent, I'm also involved in developmental journalism, where we mentor the young ones on how to write for public consumption, maybe for the media. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us in this important conversation, Malaysia Shaibu. We appreciate you and we appreciate whatever contribution and value you're going to bring into this discussion. We're still missing one presenter, and it is my greatest hope that he'll be able to join us before we make very much progress. So we're going to be discussing today about how our society has fared over the years in marrying off young girls. The age of consent for marriage is 18 years old. That is legally, but not many girls reach that age, especially in Northern Hausa societies. The UNDP has released a report in the past, I think a year and a half ago, that 43% of Northern Nigerian girls do not reach 18 years old before they are married. So that technically means they don't even reach the age of consent according to law. And yet another 16%, yes, get to 18, but they do not pass the 18-year-old gap. Yet today we are besieged with a myriad of problems socially, economically, and developmentally as a society. So we want to examine and cross-examine how marrying off young women at that age has fared in producing the next generation of Nigerians that we expect should be the ones to veer this country forward to the next level. Malain Shaibu, I am very certain that as a developmental journalist as a PR practitioner, and as a journalist yourself, and public commentator, lest I forget, you will have a verifiable argument to bring into this discourse. Why do you think we are still stuck in this place in the 21st century as a society?
Thank you very much, Hawa. In fact, I don't even know how to start. I don't know whether I will start by my experience. As I am now, I'm in my 50s. And it will surprise you that although we are talking about child marriage, underage marriage, but to me, I don't look at it from that perspective. I rather look at it and from the early marriage, not child marriage. And what I mean here is that early marriage rather than child marriage can be tolerated and encouraged because they have their value, the important advantage in society. Like we know, a marriage or a similar union, formal or informal, between two people are acceptable norms after meeting the legitimate conditions set up by our culture, religion, legislation, or court. So there's nothing wrong about early marriage. And mind you, when we talk about it, sometimes we look at it from different perspectives. Like I strongly believe that even though we talk about the age of 18, but today we have seen young entrepreneurs doing better by far before they even clock 18. Because what matters is the puberty or the stage or age of maturity. When the person reach that level, it has reached the age of independence that they can decide on their own without anybody guiding them. And we have seen what, even look at, I'll give you some list of some of the entrepreneurs that have done very, very well in less than 18, like Zuckerberg, for instance. But the fact still remains that we have our culture, we have our religion, we have the legislation, we have the court that allow that at early marriage is acceptable if the either of the two, either the female or the male meets some of these conditions. So I don't see anything wrong in that. So let us define the fact that we're not talking about child marriage per se, but we're rather talking about early marriage.
Okay, so as you said, let's talk about early marriage and basing your arguments on culture and tradition and the fact that there are a lot of upcoming young entrepreneurs who do well and are excelling in their respective endeavors before they are at the age of 18. So as a result of that, we should encourage early marriage because
Yes.
it has its benefits. So can you tell me, in your own opinion, what you think the benefits are to early marriage compared to having a successful business before the age of 18?
Thank you very much. Like I said earlier, maybe you don't have a private discussion with you. I told you that my father, let me just take it from my personal experience. I'm very proud of my parents. My dad was in secondary school for Irish study in Kano when he married my mom. And my
We lost him again. We lost him again. Oh no. And we have a timeline of 15 minutes per speaker, which we have already surpassed, and we've lost him. Okay. I'm very sorry about that technology.
mom just at that time just finished primary school when they got married. They are all.
Malayusha, we cannot hear you. We have lost you. Oh dear. I'm very sorry because of that. It's not our fault, you all know. So we are going to go to the next speaker. When we have finished speaking with the others, then perhaps Malayusha will be able to finish his presentation. Halima Wali is the PhD researcher and educationist on girl-child education. Can you tell us, in your perspective, well, yes, do you believe that girl-child marriage, as Malayusha posited, has its benefits?
For me, I would look at it from the perspective of education, girls' education, because that's where my strength lies. Basically, for girls, early marriage truncates their education a lot of the times. And you find that for those, as girls go higher in the education system, dropout rates increase. And one of the factors is early marriage. And even for those that manage to remain in school, it's a huge struggle because they now have so many moving pieces as they struggle to balance motherhood and being a wife and being in school and the extended family and so many other things. So you find that girls do not have that, they're not able to commit the time and energy required to really perform to their potential. I've seen a lot of first-class brains, women that ended up with third class and past degrees, not because they were not competent or capable, but because of the circumstances within which they found themselves made it very hard to study and to actually, for them to show their potential. And in a credential-driven society such as Nigeria, this is a backward step for the girl, or a hurdle for the girl to because you cannot prove to anyone that, look, yes, I got a third class or I got a past degree, but this is what I'm capable of doing. Our society is focused on, educational qualifications rather than what you bring to the table, your skills. So for me, it's
rather than competence.
Exactly. So for me, it's a challenge for girls being married off early. And I'm talking from the human angle now. I've spoken to a lot of girls, I've spoken to a lot of women, and this is what they say about their experiences.
So let's go back to the career perspective of, professional perspective of early marriage, girl-child marriage. How far does it impact on the general societal well-being and growth?
Like I said, my perspective is from education.
Yes.
And I remember one time, many, many years ago, when I was doing my first postgraduate degree, and a professor of mine, we were discussing, I can't remember exactly what the topic was in class, but it revolved around problem solving, like solving problems of society. And he made mention of the fact that instead of asking why when you want to solve a problem, you should ask why not. And for me, that was a fundamental shift in my mindset. It was very revealing because to him, he said, if you ask why not allows you to examine the problem in an in-depth manner that will give you insights compared to if you asked why. Why is usually the obvious. Why not makes you dig deeper. So that for me is like a nugget that I would like us to like keep in mind. Why not? So for example, it's International Women's Day and the theme is choose to challenge. I would like us to think, this is not a question that requires an immediate answer. It's just a question for reflection. In line with what I just said, instead of why, let's ask why not. Of what benefit is it to society if you do not educate girls and women? Now the word is not. By marrying them off at the age when they're supposed to be in school, what benefit does that give to society as a whole, not individual? So it's weighing self-service versus serving the society. What benefit does it give to society? Not you as a person, not your family, not at individual level, at macro level. What benefit does that give to society? So that for me should be the fundamental question to ask.
Well, apparently, it does not seem as if we're asking enough of that fundamental question. And it is basically the reason why we are here to initiate such conversations that will push us into asking those fundamental questions. Thank you very much for that insight, Halima Wali. Just vaguely, as a researcher in girl-child education, you've already asked yourself that question, why not? And what benefit will it give the society if we do not educate girls? So let's assume we all collectively agree that we're going to educate girls and young women. What do you think? What do you foresee how the society will be impacted by this little mental shift and action?
So women, girls, are the fulcrum of society. They're really the lever around which society operates. So when girls and women are equipped to discharge their responsibilities, society benefits at large. The theme of the webinar, I'd like to link this to the theme of the webinar, sending a boy to do a man's job. And to do a job, you need to know what the job is, what it requires, how you'll do it, when you'll do it. In other words, you need to be educated. And by education, I mean education in its broadest sense, which is basically the ability to adapt to changing situations and environments. For girls to be educated, some of the benefits, just in a nutshell, are let's start with the girl at an individual level. She develops self-awareness. She's able to understand herself, because you need to understand yourself before you understand others. If you do not understand yourself, it's a self-defeating situation you're in. You need to understand yourself before you relate to others. So girls develop self-awareness and explore their identities within their environments. And they develop knowledge and skills that are required for them to navigate these environments. So these benefits for girls, I like to say, are like a bottom-up approach, the bottom-up benefits. It starts for the girl and filters upwards towards her family. So for example, exactly. So she's educated, she's knowledgeable, she knows basic things about her society, about health, about education. This flows into her family. So for example, by the time she's older and she gets married, she understands that for example, regarding her children's health, her children are healthier because she's aware of nutrition, what to give the children, what's good, what's not good. Okay, my children love sugar, but I know that sugar is not good for you. So I'm going to, regulate your sugar intake, things like that. She knows about balanced diets. She knows, for example, that, okay, if money is a problem or a challenge, okay, I have these plants behind my house, which are probably a good source of nutrition that I can use to feed my children. We work closely at 1 Million Teachers with His Highness, the 14th Emir of Kano, Muhammad Sanusi. And one thing he said that just recently when we had one of our seminars was, you find that people in Kano, not Kano, sorry, generally like in the north, would sell off their harvest of beans so they can go and buy coke and bread. That to them shows that they have arrived. But this is a misunderstanding, a misnomer. Yes, the beans is more useful to you and your body and your family than the coke and bread, so things like that. And in terms of education, a mother that is educated, you can always tell the difference. I've worked in the classroom and I see it. I see the difference between a child whose mother is educated and one whose mother is not really educated, in terms of their worldview, in terms of their exposure, in terms of even their performance, because usually the school doesn't work in isolation. You need support from home, parental support. So you find that parents, mothers that are able to talk to the teachers when their children have problems, are able to nip things in the bud. It's all augurs well for the child. And in terms of managing the household, for example, that's also at a family level. Managing a household is, I salute all full-time mothers and wives out there, because it's not an easy job, managing a household. So for example, at tactical level and operational level, daily planning, what to eat, school uniforms, organizing all these daily things, taking the children to school, picking them up, extracurricular activities, all these things are part and parcel of education, which a woman, as she goes through the educational system, a girl acquires and develops. At a strategic level for the family, she's able to help each family member, actualize their vision and goal. That's individually, and then they also collectively have collective family goals. So she's able to do all this because she's educated, and a key to problem solving, again, is for you to solve a problem, you have to develop a solution at a higher level than the level at which that problem was created. So if you're not even aware that there's a problem because you're not educated, then you're not able to solve these problems. So these are just some of the benefits individually, to the family, economically. An educated girl or woman is a productive member of society. She earns a living. She's not a liability to anybody. She's an entrepreneur. Socially, politically, she's able to contribute to society. She could aspire to political office. She could also volunteer, community organizing, activism. These are all some of the benefits in a nutshell of an educated girl.
Thank you very much, Halima Wali, for that deep insight. I just hope Malan Yusho is back here with us. If he's not, I hope he will have put out the time to watch our replay. Ramatu Marbako, as an international development lawyer and a gender activist who have been at this for quite a while, how did we end up being stuck in this place in the 21st century?
I don't know. It's a difficult one and it's rather complex. But from my perspective, I beg to, should I say, prefer very my personal thoughts when it comes to early marriage and child marriage. I know definitely in terms of when you're talking about the differences, there are differences between child marriage and early marriage when in terms of definitions. But from my personal perspective,
can you tell us what the differences are?
That's where I'm coming to. Okay. What I'm saying, academics will tell us there are differences, but from my personal opinion, there is no difference. A child is a child. Even though the law has put 18 years of age as the minimum, the benchmark, the age at which a child is assumed culpable. The age at which a child is deemed culpable in terms of, the ability to vote, the age of maturity, maybe the permission to drive and have a driving license, etc., etc. You and I both know, especially in our engagement with our younger ones, that an 18-year-old, whether male or female, is not matured enough to make decisions about themselves to the extent of when you talk about marriage. They may be physiologically ready in terms of they have been able to exhibit the biological or physiological manifestations. Developed. Some are still developing. Some, it's even at that 18, they are developing the so-called breasts or whatever, biological, this thing. It has not yet formed, fully to be able to carry a child. You understand the rigors of childbirth. That's why we have so many cases of VVF among very young girls whose wombs and ovaries have not been matured enough, but simply because they had the physiological manifestations, they were deemed matured. Marriage is not like business, going to sell or do cook or sweep. Marriage involves a lot of things. That's why even in some religious, should I say religions or religious dispositions, they have what they call guidance counseling, preparing people for marriage, advice, like what you need to do as a wife, as a husband. Yes, expectations. Even in Islam, when you do your walima, they are giving you advice to prepare you for marriage. Do you understand? So I'm even wondering, when people say at 18, because you have a bust or you have a waist or you're menstruating, you're matured enough to marry. Marriage comes with a lot of challenges. How to engage with a man or your spouse, how to manage the day-to-day rigors of marital life, how to manage a home, how to deal with your in-laws, how to deal with your neighbors and so many things, how to be a mother, how to care, how to nurture. And I really wonder when people say at 18, when I see 18-year-old, going to write jam, come in asking for volunteering, and they are so innocent, some of them so naive, so ill-prepared. Some still need to be taken in the car, or parents need to still hold their hands. And people are saying simply because you have a breast, you are matured enough to marry, to be a wife, to run a home. I really wonder. I do know it's subjective. There are cases where very few, young girls are actually mature early, and they can, or they appear to be coping with some of these things. But to a large extent, we know that, most young girls at that age are not prepared. Marriage is beyond sleeping with a man and giving birth to children. There are so many factors. Like I saw the researcher Halima mentioned, when she's engaging with parents, she knows those whose parents are educated, whose parents are involved in the education. So that's where maturity comes. So I believe that, as far as I'm concerned, my own definition of a child extends to the age of 21, because it's by 21 most people really have an idea of where they are going, where their life is going, what they want to do. They've matured fully to a large extent, even physiologically, mentally, to cope with certain challenges. That is because they've gone through certain life experience. I believe that every young girl, when I talk about gender, I always like to say male and female, not just limited to the girl child, because I believe that we should be working in terms of maybe equality. I know a lot of people say girls are more mature than boys at the age of 18 or when they are teenagers. But they don't tell us when you are voting, girls are more mature at 18. So the vote of a girl should be twice more important than the vote of a boy at 18. Do you understand? So why is it when it comes to marriage? That argument is what people push. Just so because men like younger girls, maybe fresher, and they feel it fits their stereotypes or patriarchy to make those comparisons. I believe that a girl or a boy or any child should be allowed to finish secondary school at the barest minimum. Because by then, most of them are 17, 18, or 19. They are a bit matured. They've gone through the training, just like the curricula of education. Primary school curricula is different from junior secondary school. Then junior secondary school, it's assumed that they've learned certain things, so they move to the next stage. So life is in stages. And you have, just like you have the baby, the toddler, the young teenage, the preteen, the teenage, young adult. I believe life is in phases. And in those phases, you see that after the teenage years, 2021, there is an assumption at least you've reached the minimum level of maturity. And you should be given the opportunity to make certain decisions, whether to continue with education, whether to go into trade and industry, or even whether you feel you want to marry. It should be your own decision, not something that is imposed on you, simply because the man of the house is tired of feeding you and he wants to transfer his responsibility to another man. Then he comes up with different reasons as to why you are matured enough, to be married at the age of 18. The ability to sweep or wash clothes is not a sign of maturity, physically or mentally. There are a lot of people that marry at the age of 30, even 40, and they are not even psychologically ready for what it entails. What more of an 18 or 19-year-old that is just trying to, make something of their lives? So from my own perspective, with the evidence of years of working in international development, I do believe that at this age, today we are talking about the International Women's Day. We are talking about choosing to challenge. I choose to challenge social norms. I choose to challenge traditions, cultures, and practices that do not allow or prevent a child from reaching their full potential, for aspiring to be something better. Forget about the argument that people say that yes, if you marry, you can continue your education. How many people have been able to marry and continue their education? And why should it be a burden on a child, to be a female child, to be given that option? Why don't they say the boys should marry at 18 as well and continue with their education? Let's look at a situation whereby girls are given the opportunity to grow, to mature, to be ready for marriage, to be ready for the challenges they need to face in order to develop fully. And, it's so sad, like you said, in the 21st century, we are still talking about early marriage or girl-child marriage. We have a situation where there is no profession, there is no job on this earth that a woman cannot do. We are talking about, they say the sky is a limit. We've even gone beyond the sky. We've gone to the moon, we've gone to Mars. In fact, even among those that have gone to the moon and Mars are females, are women. So what is it that a woman cannot do or aspire to?
Nothing.
So I do believe that young girls, young people should be given the opportunity to mature, to finish secondary school minimum, and be given the opportunity to engage in life skills beyond just sitting down and producing like rabbits, just to fill some kind of patriarchal agenda.
Thank you very much.
And we should support the process by encouraging them to do that.
Thank you very much, Ramatu Umar Bako. That was a real punch.
When I can come in there, Awa? Can I come in there?
Yes, you did not finish your presentation and the internet kicked you off.
Halima, I'm highly impressed. Ramatu, bam, all of you have done your best in trying to convince us about this. Like I said earlier, my argument actually is not about child marriage.
It's about early marriage.
Early, but rather early marriage.
Yes,
but
so can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question?
I raised some vital issue that I just want to clear. Okay. The fact, we have to look at the factor. Yes, everybody wants his child to go to school, secondary school, university, and so on. But have you considered the factors? Have you addressed the underlying factors that are forcing some people to put their children in early marriage? We're talking about three major factors. Number one is responsibility. Number one, responsibility. The parents, do they have responsibility for the child? Number two is security. What about the security of the child? Number three is social decadence, the crisis we're having in our society today. We're talking about the child has to be 21, 24. We're seeing people, I'm sorry to say, at the age of 40 who are still fools, but we're seeing young kids, young child at the age of 18 breaking records. I can cite a little example. Like I was trying to say earlier on, we're talking about some of the most successful young entrepreneurs in the world. And most of them make it at their teenage, before 20th birthday. It's like, surprisingly, we're talking about school. Some of them have dropped out. Should I give an example? Look at him, Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook. Same thing to Matthew, the founder of WordPress, one of the websites we're using all over the world. 70% of the websites we're using in the world is through the initiative of Matthew. Now we have Catherine Cook, the creator of, she's 15 years old, my yearbook. We have Blake Rose, the creator of Mozilla Firefox. We have Fraser Authority, founder of, we have a lot of them. At the age of 15, 16, 17, they're mature, they're independent, they have idea about the business world.
But that is you mentioned all men, not there is no.
No, I'm not coming back to the factors. We have to understand that the factor that we need to address. What are those factors? We talk about the factor of looking for inner fulfillment from poverty. There's some family members, even for sure in Nigeria, that cannot even feed their own children. Inner fulfillment from poverty and deprivation. If these elements of sometimes some parents, that's the way to save their children from what? from deprivation, from what? From prostitution and drugs addiction. The other side, we also have the issue of protection, especially in some of these areas, protection from what? In slums, in Boko Haram zone, where there's crisis, from what? From sexual exploitation and sexual harassment. Sometimes that is the reason why some of the parents, I'm not encouraging it, but I'm just saying to tell us that there is challenge. We have to look at the bottom line, the crisis first, and then look how to address them. We also look at the other people. We have seen some of our big people, the political and financial alliance between parents. This one is beyond poverty. This peer is beyond insecurity. You see them, one millionaire taking his child of 18 years and his daughter, and they are living peacefully. Like I say earlier on, please, with due respect, I say earlier on, and I wish I have sent my father's picture of my mom. The only thing with my father, he was in secondary school when he married my mom. He was even though he's a scholar now, he's a professor. But my mother, he married her immediately she finished primary school. She's still alive, like kicking strong. When you see my mother like me, you think maybe she's my senior girlfriend.
What year was that?
It mean that we're 1969. So what I'm trying to say, yes, 1969. So what I'm trying to say here is that I strongly advocate that before we even consider some of those guys for marriage, we have to ensure that as they have that, are they independent person, strong, confident, level-headed, thoughtful, and supportive. We have seen a lot of them. Some of these guys selling Osei and Waina and Tuo. As young as 16, they are smart, in fact, more smarter than the so-called men that are marrying. Only some of them are even more intelligent than the so-called husbands who are 40 and 50. Who are seeing with technology now, we're talking about which school? Which school? With technology now, you just have your smartphone, put that on e-learning. My children, you don't need to go to school because all you need to do, just try to see how they can imbibe the technology. They don't have the skills. A lot of them are at home in Kano, Katsina, producing what? Snacks, food from their home. They don't need to go out. They are becoming homemaker and they're doing very, very well. With due respect, like I said earlier, I don't tolerate, I don't believe, I will not encourage child marriage, but there's nothing wrong with early marriage. That's my point.
Can you tell us what you think the difference is between child marriage and early marriage, sir?
When you say child, child is a child.
Okay, how old
child
is a child?
Is a child. But I strongly believe anybody for early marriage must attain the age of puberty and age of maturity.
What's the age of puberty and maturity?
Look, there's some of scientific evidence there, but I don't even want to care about it. But the fact is, the only thing I can give you is the fact that at least international community, they have agreed about one thing. What is the agreement? Based on statistics of 2010, let me look at it. Look at what happened. 158 countries reported that 18 years was the minimum legal age for marriage for women without parental consent or approval by partner authority. But parents and law, by other circumstances, can allow them to marry out their children at lower age. Similarly, in 146 countries, state or customary law allow girls younger than 18 to marry with consent of parent or other authority. Meanwhile, in 52 countries, girls under the age of 15 can marry with parent consent, and they're doing it. This is statistics. Now, in 105 countries, boys can marry with the consent of their parent or authority at the age of 18. Then in 23 countries, girls under 15 can marry without parent consent.
Am I going to be allowed to talk today?
Thank you. Malaysia, you have picked. Dr. Paul Agbo.
Well done, Malam Michelle. You were talking about the age of puberty. Yes,
sorry.
Children that attain puberty at the age of 6. Does that mean they are mature to be married?
That's why I told you.
Can you guys hold on? Ramatu Amale, you shall please hang on. Thank you very much. We'll come back to you in a minute. Dr. Paul Agbo is a psychiatrist in the house, and he joined us a bit late while I think Ramatu was talking before Malayusha zoomed back in and just interjected. We are having a very interesting conversation, and I'm very happy that we have more and more people joining the conversation. Dr. Paul Agbo is a certified psychiatrist and mental health consultant. Thank you very much for joining us. Since you came in a bit late, I will just allow you to introduce yourself and just jump into the conversation. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I had some bit of a challenge. I actually heard Halima speak. And then I was very impressed with the submission of Mrs. Ramatu. And I was going to say I concur with her position up until the last speaker started speaking. I just, if the shoe were turned around and whoever it is that is advocating or is pretending not to know the difference between a child and trying to demarcate what who a child is, can they just think back to when they were 15? How were they? Anybody who is advocating and does not know the difference and is trying to create some sensational headline. What were you? How were you when you were 18 years? How were you when you were 21? Do you think that if you had married at that time, you would have made a success of it? That's number one. Number two, in every given situation, you have what we call outliers. Do not ever use the outliers to generalize. And so, for instance, you can have a situation where a 6-year-old gets married and lasts through the marriage. But how many 6-year-olds would last through that marriage? So you will not use one incident and then generalize it. Fortunately for us, I like that it's not a religious matter, because this issue of child marriage and early marriage cuts across all religions. What appears to be the common denominator is culture. It's a cultural thing. And so I think I'm a bit comfortable talking about it, and except people deliberately want to misunderstand us, don't restrict this discussion and don't make it a religious thing. It's a cultural thing. And like the last speaker said, let me just borrow something he said. There are so many factors, but the factors in themselves don't justify this very bizarre and abnormal practice of asking a child to get married. Now, when Mrs. Ramatu was speaking, she said a patriarchal system, and that's what it is. There's this sense of being in control. When you marry a child, ultimately you control the person. The person has no say. You say turn left, the person turns left. You say turn right, the person turns. That is the only joy anybody can tell me they derive in marrying a child. You don't want anybody to challenge you. Otherwise, what pleasure? When she said they are softer, they are younger, I don't understand that, because if you marry your wife at 25 or 30 or 35, and she's soft for you now, she's young for you, that's why you married her. The desire for abnormal, very abnormal things that we justify for whatever reason is just unbelievable in this century. Even at 18, I'm a psychiatrist. I see a lot of young girls coming to the clinic, with depression. A lot of them with depression. Many of them cannot talk because of the society we are in. But the commonest thing they come with is, I can't sleep. And then when you dig further down, they are not happy. And nobody wants to talk about it. After all, even if they run out of the homes, they are sent back. The pressure on the girl child and on women generally, because let's not restrict this discussion. Yes, we are talking about early marriage, child marriages, but the pressure on the woman is such that it's unbelievable how they cope in Nigeria and in other third world countries. It's unbelievable. And it is strange that the topic is sending a boy to do a man's job. I would have thought it would be sending a girl to do a woman's job.
Well,
yes, because no, I'm just, it's not for you to answer now, but I'm
okay.
just saying that this child marriage, early marriage thing is, you're sending a baby to take on an elderly woman's job. When Halima was talking, she was talking about something as small as organizing the family day to day. We take it for granted. We think that they should know. But ask the men, as shameful as it is, ask them if the woman fell ill. I know what I'm talking about. The children just starve. Some men don't even know how to boil water. As shameful as it is. It's that 16-year-old, 17-year-old who should still be hanging around her mother. Somebody is trying to justify and tell me that. So that means now that for every child that wants to marry, we should do an assessment. Are you psychologically fit? Are you emotionally fit? Are you physically developed? Then when we give them pass mark, they marry. The truth of the matter is, if we are serious, we'll talk about this thing. Let's challenge the stereotype. It's doing nobody any good. We are just having an army of illiterate, unhappy, and desperate people in homes. The last person talked about statistics. I wish he had reeled out the statistics of how many people who get married early stay in the marriages. I read the health survey that was done in 2008. Do you know that in this country, a child as young as 4 years old, four, got married? 4. I don't know what manner of marriage it was. Surprisingly, they said she stayed in that marriage until the review that was done sometime in 2016. But she was 4 when she got married. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Every single age was represented in that survey. They got married. Are we going to say that because, for instance, poverty is a factor, we should allow everybody to become a kidnapper if we are justifying it? Let's address those factors, but let's also agree that some of the things we are doing in justifying those factors are not correct. We are talking about what's the name of these children that hawk? Street children. And we are saying they are not correct. It's not a correct thing. Nobody is saying it's because of poverty, let us encourage. We are saying take them off the streets. The same way we should also say stop this early marriage, stop it. It is an abuse of the fundamental human rights of a child. You know, if you are going to talk about this thing, we keep on talking about it till evening, and it would not be enough. But let me just say that the children that are subjected to this very harrowing experience, I read the account of one who was in Northwest, who was eventually forced to leave the marriage, and she said it wasn't marriage. It wasn't marriage. It was a horror show. And I guess if we ever had access to these children and asked them, what were your experiences? I will be surprised the responses we'll get. So from the mental health perspective, you know, there is no study that I've come across that justifies, that says child marriage actually builds up the esteem, sense of self-worth of a child. There is none. Everything keeps on telling you that there's a sense of devaluation, a sense of hopelessness, despair, depression, and drug use. Incidentally, most times when they can't sleep, they start abusing drugs so that they will sleep at night. And so the thing that we say we are running from, we are beginning to recreate it silently. So I don't want to.
Could that be the social decadence that Malam Yusha'u was speaking about earlier when he said there is so much social decadence in the society?
The social decadence cannot be an excuse.
The rampant cases of teenage
pregnancy. Sorry. I think she was referring to me. The social decadence cannot be an excuse for further decadence. Let us call child marriage and child abuse what it is. It is an ethical decadence. So you cannot now juxtapose or exchange one for the other. So if there is moral, are you saying that all children in Nigeria now are socially decadent? You can't say that. There are many children that are morally and ethically well brought up. So if you are using the examples of a few to generalize and justify what is not correct, I don't see how that makes sense. There's a lot of decadence. There's a lot. Even those that are married, they are decadent. Okay, what will you do if you marry a 15-year-old and inside the marriage, she now becomes decadent? What will you do? You'll remarry her? Do you understand? So until we address the root cause, we cannot keep on jumping from pillar to post. Society has been decadent for a long time. So long as there is poverty, there will be a lot of decadence. But that you marry a child off Okay, why don't you marry the boys now? Why don't you marry the boys? Why
Some
is it that
societies actually do. Some societies do. A friend I
they
had,
say there's about 1.5 million men alive now who, yes, I think 1.5 or 50 million who were married as boys compared to over how many million who were married as girls. So they do. But you know, somehow in those societies, the impact, the family still supports. There's this kind of support they give the male child that is lacking when a girl goes into marriage. It's almost as if you marry her and you sell her off.
yeah,
It's different. The contexts are very different. So the issue of decadence cannot be used as a justification. It cannot be used as a justification.
Dr. Abu, I just wanted to ask you this quick question. In your position as a psychiatrist and a certified mental health consultant, what do you think? Because Malan Yusha'u was very empathic about the age of majority, the age of maturity. We all agree that there is no set age to maturity, but I am assuming that as a psychiatrist and mental health consultant, you will have an idea as to the average age that it will require for a human being to mature mentally and psychologically.
Thank you. You know, he also mentioned something about the Western world. Let's be careful. Right now, a child of 7 in America is allowed to choose their gender. Does that mean that to also in Nigeria say we will allow our children 7 years to come and say, Daddy, I want to be a girl today? So let's not be quick to reference them in their bid to become supermen.
Absolutely.
I think, yes, I think that if we use ourselves as examples, you know, 18 to 21 appears to be the age where all of us looked back and thought that, okay, at this age, I think I could have stood on my own. I would have survived, even if nobody was with me. 18 to 21. And when she said finishing secondary school, and now children are going to school and graduating from the university at 21, all of those experiences, all of the experiences you would have garnered in primary school, secondary school, university, learning how to negotiate, learning how to discuss, learning how to be firm, just give and take, makes you a better person who is able to cope with whatever marriage will throw at you. For all of us who are married, we know what marriage is like. We know how it is. And so to ask anybody, and surprisingly, the statistics will tell you that a lot of them divorce. Is it 24% of those who were married between 10 to 15 are divorced? They divorced after 3 years. It's there in the books. And so it means that it's not as pleasurable and pleasant as we are talking about. And most of the children who run away from homes, when their parents send them back, they go and swell. I'm using the language that was used in the researches. They go and swell the numbers of commercial sex workers. So at the end of the day, the same thing we said we were trying to prevent, we are now recreating it. We are now breeding a society that is a viable ground for all manner of recruitment, because there's a lot of resentment, resentment in homes. So let's not downplay this because some people feel that they are not concerned. Now, let me ask the man that is talking, would he marry his daughter off at 15? Would he, even though he has said he doesn't support it, but then the way he's speaking appears as if he's agreeing with the factors that are promoting this habit. Nobody.
I mentioned from the beginning, doctor, that look, I'm a product of early marriage.
Excuse me. You have to leave Dr. Paul to finish speaking before you come in. Please stop interjecting. Dr. Paul is the last speaker, and we have to give him that dignity to finish his presentation before you jump in. Thank you very much. Sorry about the interruption, Dr. Paul. Just round up your presentation.
Thank you, moderator. Yes, I would just want to say that over 90% of these child and early marriages happen in poor and deprived societies and communities. It tells you a lot. It means that it is not even a function of, it's not so much a function of religion and culture, but economics. So let us be free to talk about, it's about economics. The remaining 5% that do it because of family dynamics. The rich want to marry the rich, and then they betrothed their young daughters to a rich man's son, so that the family name, it's very negligible. 90 to 95% is among poor people. So it means that even we ourselves recognize that it's not a good practice. So let nobody come and justify it. Let nobody come and justify it. Hello?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abu.
All right. Yeah.
Just one last question and a little bit of clarification from our own part. The rationale behind the title of this talk, Sending a Boy to Do a Man's Job, is number one, to arouse curiosity. Number two, to lay emphasis on the fact that we keep sending the wrong people to do the most important jobs. In my opinion, as a mother, the most important responsibility of the entire world is giving birth and raising children. Yet everyone agrees to that, because this is something that we girls have been told all our lives, that your most important responsibility is to be a mother. Fine, it is, but how come we keep giving this most important responsibility to the most ill-prepared and ill-equipped? Because young girls are not equipped to be mothers. Even 19, 20-year-olds are not equipped and prepared to be mothers. It is something that still overwhelms me at 45. And I look back and wonder how we all survived it. And I look back, I wonder, must the next generation of women go through the baptism of fire we did just because it is what society wants? And I personally feel that there isn't enough conversation about how the mental toll this takes on young girls who transition from being teenagers to young women and old women. It takes a mental toll, which I feel that you as a psychiatrist have an idea of the kind of mental toll this takes. Because from a young girl to a young woman and to a matured mother, of course, there are a lot of baggages that accrue over the years that takes a mental toll, which brings us to the current resentment you're talking about that exists in homes, that boils out to the generality of the society that we're not talking about. Can you give us, just as your closing remark, your opinion of how this can be curbed? How do we begin to retrace our steps back? How do we begin to address this? Number one, the mental toll on women and girls. Number two, how do we ensure that young girls are not burdened with these responsibilities that accumulate to mental toll?
Wow. Look, when you talk about suffering, because when you say mental toll, that's just the summary, suffering. How do you measure suffering? How can I tell you about suffering? It is the person who has suffered that can explain to you what they went through. I can only give you statistics and say in about 500 or 700 women I've seen, an estimate, more than two-thirds are unhappy, grievously unhappy, and it cuts across all religions. They are unhappy. And it's worse when you see the ones that cannot even express their unhappiness. They don't even know what is ailing them. It's you now that would have to now start teasing it out, because they don't even understand what the problem is. They just know that they are not happy. They are not happy, they are not fulfilled. Now, most of them carry babies carrying babies. They are walking on the street and they see their mates wearing school uniforms. They see their mates carrying backpacks going to school. Just flip the thing around. If it were you, how would you feel? The mental health toll is heavy And it's actually depressing, even for me as a psychiatrist. You know, sometimes it's just women you'll be seeing. And the story is just similar. You just want to run, you just want to run away. You just want to just go and do something else. So as for addressing it, I think you've started a good thing, you know, but more people must key into this. There will be resistance. There may be threats. I know how it is. I went somewhere to talk, and I mentioned that one of the greatest problem of women are men. And I realized that a group of men in front were frowning, you know, that I said it. And I'm a man, oh, and they were frowning at me. I imagine if it was a woman who said it, if they had their way, they probably would pull her down from the stage. So you would have a lot of resistance. You have people call you names. You have people resist and castigate you. But we must talk about this. We must talk about it. We must continue talking about it until people actually start paying attention. It was a shameful thing when a former governor, or was it a senator, married, was it a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old? And people celebrated it and said there was nothing wrong with it. It was a disgrace. At that point, people ought to have stood up and they did. I remember that people, but they didn't condemn him well enough. He should have been stripped of his position because that was blatant child abuse, you know? So, and then, you know, one of the things I realized is that when children get into marriages, somehow they are threatened into keeping quiet. And so they can't even unburden themselves. They can't talk. And that's the number one killer of humanity, of humaneness. This thing wherein you carry your burden and you are just walking, you can't talk to anybody, you are threatened, don't mind, and they beat them, they molest them, they deprive them of basic necessities. And in some cases, do you know that if the child falls ill, the father can comfortably tell the mother, I don't have money, and don't you dare take him to the hospital. And the mother is a child. I've seen ladies who said they watched their babies die. They couldn't do anything. What do you think will happen to the mind of this kind of person? And so I can't begin to tell you the toll it takes. But I know that this is a good step. This is a start. Let us continue talking about it. And let's call this what it truly is: fundamental human rights abuse. And anybody that does this should be shamed. That's my take.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paul Abo, for that explicit presentation. We appreciate your presence and your contribution to this discourse. Ramatu Marbako was raising her hand earlier on. She wanted to say something. If you're still on, would you like to, I suppose you have some remarks or some things you wanted to say to Mala Yusho?
Thank you. Not necessarily Malam Yusho, but I had mentioned the fact that, you know, the examples he had given in terms of people, you know, in terms of people achieving or, you know, like being able to design WhatsApp platform or Facebook at the age of 15 or 16. And I was wondering at the correlation, because you know, I had earlier on mentioned that now the age of biological maturity, some children now develop by the age of 5 or 6. They now have breasts or they've started their menstrual periods. Those are the outliers that Dr. Agbo was talking about. So does that mean once a child, you know, has developed breasts or menstruates at the age of 6, the child is now matured enough for marriage? Or because a child is able to invent something at a very young age, even at the age of 5 or 6, you can invent the cure to COVID. That means you are matured enough to get married because you've invented something. So I was like, we should try to limit, let's say, our arguments to within context, because by taking it out of context, it kind of ridicules the points we're trying to make and turns the conversation into an unserious matter or an unserious issue, you know. And also, I just wanted to make add that, you know, the doctor also said that he's happy the conversation did not degenerate into a religious or cultural conversation, which is really excellent. It's brilliant, because the issue at the core of what we face, you know, in early or girl child marriage is actually patriarchy, like I always say, and it's also cultural norms and traditions. So how do we have those courageous conversations to interrogate those cultures, those traditions that are no longer working, that are no longer relevant, you know, in this day and age that we are in? And also that if it worked for our parents in their generation years ago, we are talking about ourselves now. Look at the reality of how we were as teenagers, how we were as 18, when we're 21. Were we matured enough? Did we feel confident or mature enough to be able to stand on our own without support? That those should be the matrix under which we should use to evaluate and carry on these conversations. Because things have changed from before, and we are learning. I am assuming that as human beings, we are evolving from the Neanderthal stage to the stage we are now. So we shouldn't be having caveman conversations now. We should be looking at the realities, the current realities, and how we see things progressing. You know, so that's just what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Ramatu Bako. Male Yushau, you were interjecting Dr. Paul's presentation earlier on. Would you like to come on and talk to Dr. Paul? What did you wanted to say earlier?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much once again. It's not actually a cultural thing, like I said earlier. We are all educated. And like I said, we have to understand some of the underlying factors that encourage some people to encourage early marriage. Like you keep on saying, I'm totally against child or baby, they call it a baby bride or something like that. Anything I'll do with child, yes, I'm against it. But anything had to do with early marriage, based on attaining the age of maturity, there's nothing wrong with it. Like I said, as much as, look, like I gave an example. I sent you a WhatsApp, the picture of myself, my father, and my mom. And I was telling you that I'm a product of the early marriage. Even though my father was then in secondary school, and today is a professor, and my mother is just finished primary school, and they are alive. That if you see, you think, you know, so those are some of the symbols I was trying to talk about. But the fact still remains that whether we like it or not, we have to face the reality. One, how do we curtail the rampant cases of teenage pregnancy? By abortion? What about some of the cases of drug addiction and cultism? By what? These are some of the factors we have to consider. And like I said earlier, if the couple, like I strongly believe that I advocate the fact that if the partners, they all agree, if the lady agree to marry at that age, then there's no reason for us to stop them. I believe in undiluted love and affection at first sight. So denying them until when they get the age of 30-something or whatever is something else. That's why I provide a statistic. We're talking about statistics of how many countries, how many of them? 158 countries agree on that age of 18. So what are we talking about? And the many families that have, many we know they are product of that, and then what are we talking about? It's about the age of consent. If they all agree and the parents agree and based on other circumstances, when we talk about circumstances, in some of the literature I've observed, circumstances can be determined by health expert, maybe medical doctor can find out whether they can. So I don't see anything wrong in that. So we have to understand that I already raised some of these factors. We have to look at it, go to Maiduguri, go to all this war zone, go and see what is happening. What about I'm sorry, even though some of you are aware, Sheriba already had a baby. Nobody's paying for our child to be impregnated. She's not a baby. There are many of them like that. In circumstances, you find ourselves, we have to look for a way to address them. That's why the government has to come in. That's why NGOs have to come in. That's why other ones have to come and curtail some of these things. But when it comes to early marriage, not child marriage, I'm in support. Thank you once again, Hawa.
I just saw a question that one of the participants posted, which I myself have still have it stuck at the back of my head. I'm still not yet clear between the difference between child and early marriage.
Yeah, let me give it to you there, please. But just Google it. It's a statistic. I have the figure. That's why I give that
No.
figure.
Yes, no. I want your own opinion of what is child marriage. What age is child and what age is early?
Me?
Yes.
Fine, simple. Just get the definition of a child. The age of a child is a child. That is all. When you have gone beyond child, because my son, at least, well, they are graduate now. My children, yes, they are graduate at the age of whether 30. If you want to get married, in fact, since the time they graduate, I wanted to get married. But they are not children, they are not kids. So that's what I'm saying. A child is a child. A baby is a baby. But a man, my son is a man because of this. You understand? That's what I'm saying.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Does Dr. Abo want to say something here?
Yes. I'm just wondering at how he's just very ingenious in not answering questions, because he has said a child is a child and a baby is a baby. Okay, what is your own? You have not said it. Anything less than 15, I think, if I remember correctly, was termed child, and less than 18 was termed early marriage, if I remember the definition clearly. But beyond those figures, and then age of consent, even in medicine, is 18 years. And so if anybody less than 18 walks into the hospital now and says, I want an operation, we will not give that person, because that person needs somebody to come and say, yes, go ahead. So even in medicine, it's 18 years. But what we are saying is, people are not even obeying the 18. What we are talking about now is 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And that's where this problem is coming from. And now, even at 18, how many of the people who are truly affected have finished secondary school? Somebody, I think it was Mrs. Halima, who was talking about truncating their education. There's not, see, it is terrible in this century to prevent somebody from having the basic education, and that's secondary school, not primary. With secondary school, at least you can reason. Education is quite important, very, very important. She was talking about certificates, but it goes beyond certificates. You said our environment is a certificated environment. The interactions in school there's nothing that equals it. I'm surprised. He said e-learning. I am amazed that he brought it in. Do you know that you give some people computer now, they don't even know what to do with it? You must first have had a background before they take you into e-learning. So I didn't even get why he was talking about it, saying that you do, almost as if to say that you don't need to go to school, just give the person a computer and then the person teaches himself. I'm wondering. And so beyond those figures of 15, 18, we are talking about the humaneness of our decisions. And let us look at what has happened to those that were married before those times. Let us study them and decide that this is a good path to follow, or it's not a good path to follow at all. And in my opinion, based on what I've seen on the ground, the products of these early and child marriages don't turn out well. People cope, and women cope much more. A woman will bear pressures that a man will crack under. Do not look at that coping and say the person is doing well. No. Don't use that as a yardstick. And so please, beyond those statutory figures of 15, 18, we must address this matter. If it were 18, okay, manageable, but still not good enough. Allow the person finish school. At least secondary school. Then he talked about consent if the two parties agree. But we all know that nobody asks the girl's opinion. We know that they just come and say, Gashi, go and get married. So I still don't understand why he's saying if the two of them agree. If it were two couples or two lovebirds, would we be having this conversation? It is about imposition. And most times from the father, you must marry. In fact, you don't dare say anything. And so maybe he is not understanding what we are discussing really, because he's bringing in examples that are not the reality on the ground. And so for us, well, for me, not for us, for me, it is not something I will ever engage in. It's not something that I imagine for myself. It's not something I will encourage anybody to do. I have not seen any advantage when you say that you are trying to make people not become sexually active. It means that in his opinion or in their opinion, any person, any girl who crosses 18 becomes promiscuous. And that's not true. That's not true. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Can I
Dr. Abo. Yes, Binta Shuaibu and Ahmed Mayaki have been raising their hands since forever.
Okay.
So Binta, please go on. What is it you want to contribute to the conversation?
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining in and giving your own opinion. I just want to add a few points here. I believe that there are different rates and that every age range has a purpose in our lives as human beings. 1 to 10 is different, 11 to 20 is different, 21 to 30, and so on and so forth. There's a time to be a child, there's a time to be a teenager, there's a time to try and figure out yourself, whether you're growing or you're having issues, or the time to make mistakes, and there's time to accept maturity. I certainly do not believe that marriage is the only way you can show you're matured, but culturally, like we said, it's been graded as a form of maturity. So I want to also go back to the point of Malaysia, where he talked about puberty. Puberty does not signify in any way mental maturity. So because you can produce eggs and have your period, because you can produce sperms, doesn't mean you're ready to be a parent, doesn't mean you're mentally ready. Your body is just telling you, okay, we're ready anytime you are, but it doesn't mean mentally you're there yet. And I believe that at this day and age, with the whole world and everything that is happening, I believe if you're less than 30 in this time and age, you have no business getting married. If you're less, both male and female, if you're less than 30, I mean it, you know? And I remember he talked about his parents getting married at a very different age. I mean, that was a different time and society. Men go off to war then and die. Doesn't mean that now you should go to war and die. You have a choice whether to get in there or not. And let me take you back from a personal experience with my grandmother. She got married at the age of 15, but there was a decision I took some years ago while she was still alive. And she was like, how was I able to take that decision without consulting my husband? I said, because it's okay. If he took that decision on me, it doesn't mean because I'm the wife, I can't take that decision. And she was like, oh my God, we've really been cheated. The way I laughed that day, and I said, are you just realizing it? We all know that time and generation, you know, and we got talking and it was a very funny thing, but I understood what she meant. She said they didn't have a choice to dictate when they wanted to start giving birth. That means birth control was not there until you just stop producing. And let me tell you, all the parents culturally now, because like we said, this is not from a religious angle, that are eager to get their girls specifically married off, it's because they don't want the responsibility of raising a child. The ones that don't want the girl, they marry her off. The ones that have the boys, they send them off to Almajiri or cast them out of the house, but they do not stop reproducing. So they reproduce for their own pleasure and refuse to do the necessary act of reproducing, which is birth control, to actually produce what they can take care of. Most people do not believe that they will be their children, how they raise their children and how they are as parents will be accountable one day, you know, even society or otherwise. So those particular set of parenting techniques or people that practice it believe that if you're a girl, you should die in your husband's house if you want to make heaven. However, my question is that what about those that never got married and these people are really good human beings, the women? What happens to them? They go to hell because they never got married? I mean, when parents get married at an early age, then and different. If you were to sit down now, and I think I don't want it to come from a personal angle, but purely professional, Mala Isha, if you had to sit down now and truly ask your mother about that time, she would tell you how excited she was to get married and everything, how she was happy when she had children, probably. But if you were to ask her now if she was to do it all over again, I can assure you the answer would be different. These women, however much you think they were there as mothers, grandmothers, held their family together, they wanted something different, but they were never given the choice and opportunity to even know what they want and even express what they want. And as far as promiscuity is concerned, I think sex education delays a lot of promiscuity. When you introduce that, it doesn't mean you're telling them, oh, buy condoms and keep walking around or keep having sex and it's okay. Most research has shown that parents who indulge their children in early sex education delay having sex till late because there's no excitement to it anymore. The whole excitement is because your parents don't know, you're just having fun. There's no more excitement. You can actually talk about things with your parents. So please, maybe we should look at this from a broader sense of this thing. I remember the topic is boys going off to do men's work. Boys are taught not to cry, not to be emotional, not to express themselves. But do you know that there's so many men now that are broken, that want to be vulnerable, but society does not allow them to be simply because they will be put in a box that they're not mentally there? Or, oh, you're crying because you're behaving like a woman. You're being vulnerable because you're behaving like a woman. You're this and that. It's absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Even if a girl at that age tells you, oh, she's ready to get married, it may have been a crush. And that's not love. It's just excitement, And it's a growth path, actually. So for me, in this day and age, you're under 30, whether you're male, female, you have no business getting married. I think all the people that have advised under that age that wanted to get married, give or take, give them 2 years, especially the men. When I see them, I was like, it shock you. And they would just be laughing. Like, okay, now you get my point. And if I'm to ask them, do you want to reverse it if you were given the chance, they would not hesitate in saying yes. And these are the men. I haven't even gotten to the women. So maybe we should look at things in this day and age. Times have changed. It's not like we have to keep recycling everything that was done before. People used to trek all over the world before. You want to keep trekking or do you want to take a car? Convenience, So maybe we should look at things differently in this day and age. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you
all I
very
wanted
much,
to add.
Binta Shuaibu, for those very insightful contribution. Ahmed Meyaki was raising his hand earlier on. Ahmed, are you still with us? We want to make sure that everyone gets the chance to express their opinion, get the chance to be heard and hear other people. This is a very informal forum where we will rub minds and exchange ideas in order to foster solutions to some of the things that concerns us, women and girls. And I am very happy and proud of the fact that we are not gender biased, so you cannot accuse us of partiality or biasness in any way or discrimination. We have an equal number of men and women in attendance. Come, let's join hands and heads and brains and rub minds and share ideas, because what concerns us concerns you, and you should be a part of this problem solution finding mission. So Ahmed Meyaki is not here. Omoni Salami.
I'm here.
Oh,
here.
Ahmed Meyaki. Okay, I didn't see you. So please.
I thought we have another speaker again. So I was just
No. We had no speakers. Sorry, 4 speakers who have already spoken. If you have any observation or questions,
I've been
any
following.
of them.
I thought we have another speaker and you.
No.
Because
presentation. Well, I'm the host and moderator, so please.
Yes, it has been a very engaging and robust conversation, I must say.
Thank you very much.
I was just listening from the background, learning from, experts. But honestly, no one is right and no one is wrong from this conversation. Because like you have said, it's not about who wins or who actually lost. It's actually about enriching each other's knowledge and experience from the issue of early marriage, or whether you call it early marriage or you call it child marriage. There's a lot of correlation between maternal mortality and the age of marriage, whether it is 18 or less or more. Most importantly, it has been established that the level of education of a girl, to a large extent, determines how safe she's able to conceive and deliver a child. Yes, you can get pregnant at an earlier age, but how prepared are you psychologically is something entirely different. But I must say, I think we are too fast not to understand what Mr. Yusho is trying to explain. Of course, it is very clear that no child should get married at the age of 10, 12, or 15 until they are
Ahmed Mayaki, are you still with us? Hello? Ahmed Mayaki, are you still with us? Hello?
child. Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, you're
Yes.
back with us now, but you were off earlier on. Hello, Ahmed.
So quickly. Oh, okay. Quickly, I'm.
Hello, Ahmed Mayaki.
Hello? Yes.
Well, your connection was not very good. I think we've lost Ahmed Mayaki. So we have two more participants wanting to.
Back. Can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me? I'm back.
We can hear you now. We can hear you now.
Yes, very quickly.
Okay.
I'm trying to say we should understand what Yusho is trying to say.
Of course.
It all depends largely on the responsibility. Of course, it is totally wrong to get anybody married at the age that is he or she is considered as a child. But essentially, he is driving a point that whether or not you are married earlier or later in age, that will not in any way hinder your aspirations as human beings. You can achieve what you want to achieve as, depending on how early you got married or how late you got married. So notwithstanding stage you got married, one can still achieve his aspiration or her aspiration. There is an argument globally that child marriage or early marriage is not an African thing. The statistics you gave from the opening is not peculiar to Africa or to northern Nigeria. Up to today, you still have societies in America, societies in Europe, societies in South America that get married at much earlier age than the 18, and they survive it. And for those of us who are very conversant with TV stations that show such marriage at puberty age or in school, people survive this around the world. So it's not really particular or peculiar to Africa or to northern Nigeria. It is not northern Nigeria specific challenge.
Does that mean we shouldn't talk about it then?
No, we should talk about it. Of course, it's an issue that must be talked about, but we shouldn't make it look like it's just an African thing. It is a global challenge.
No, we know it is a global challenge, but we cannot speak about the challenges in other countries or societies. We'll speak about the challenges of our own society.
Looking at the UNDP statistics that you read out at the beginning of this conversation, one will assume that the issue of early marriage is just peculiar to this part of the world, but it's a global issue. You have societies around the world. I'm sure when you look at the UNDP statistics further, you will see societies that are faced with the same challenge. I'm not in any way suggesting that we should not talk about it, but we shouldn't make it look like it is a northern Nigerian issue or is an African challenge. It's a global thing. You have societies that are faced with the same challenges, societies that we consider more developed than Africa, also going through the same process. So it's not an African thing. But like I have said, you know, there's a lot of correlation between maternal mortality in Africa or in this part of the world and the age women get married, because a woman is much more, it is much more easier for a woman to go through the process of antenatal and delivery, as well as nursing a baby when she's educated to an extent than when she is not. Just like the presentation of one of the first speakers, I think somebody Wali, is it Ramatu?
Yes, the PhD researcher. Yes, she's the girl
she
child
made that very
education
clear,
researcher.
which I'll really be very glad if she will share some of those statistics. You know, that is very realistic. You know, it is something that is easier. The age and the level of education of a girl determines how responsible and how responsive she becomes as a mother. That is very true. You know, that we can relate very easy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mala Ahmed Nayagi. We appreciate your contribution to this robust conversation. We appreciate you. We have three more people wanting to contribute. Ima Bong James, I saw you raising your hand earlier. Do you still want to share?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Ma, for the opportunity. I'm sorry,
You're
my video is
welcome.
not coming up. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's fine.
Yeah, my own contribution is like, okay, we've had really nice conversations about this child marriage and the early marriage. But you see, the people that are actually victims of this don't have a say. They can't speak for themselves. They can't stand for themselves. Families are giving out their daughters because they don't really have a say. They've seen someone who is coming to help them financially and, you know, attend to their needs. So they give out these children. So how do we get to these people and actually help them in their situation? Because we can stay here and protect, because I think everybody on this platform can protect their own daughters, can protect their own sons from all of this. But how do we get to the people that can't help themselves and be of help to them? That is the thing I've been thinking about all along. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that, Ima Bong. This is challenge thrown to all of us to reflect and look deep and think of solutions of how we can help alleviate and reduce and protect the victims of these circumstances. I think in my own part, I will say it is one of the most important reasons for organizing this webinar, to create the platform where we will rub minds and share ideas and bring about solutions that we both can individually do in our own individual ways and also collectively. Mr. Omoni Salami, you want to contribute, sir?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We are glad to have you in this discussion.
I think my contribution is very simple. I just feel that at the end of the day, the art of this matter is choice. I feel that one of the biggest problems we have, mostly even this child or early marriage, is not even about the age. I believe that if you are not 18-year-old, you have no business getting married. But when you are 18, I think the thing should be the choice. I think one of the biggest problems we have is because the men all through it have always seemed to have an idea, the solution, how a woman should think, how a woman should live, what the woman should like, what a woman should eat, without giving them a choice to determine what they really want to do. So I think the real issue here should be about the question. A woman at all times should be able to make his own choice, because you can marry at the age of 18 or 20 or 21, and most likely, I agree, most likely the likelihood of that marriage having problem is high. But life is all about experience. It is easier to manage when you make the choice yourself, not anybody forcing you into marriage. Do you understand? So as far as I'm concerned, I think men should just we should just realize that we don't know women as much as we think we do. We don't know them enough. I mean, how they think, how they should talk, what they should like, what they should hate. I think we should allow them to at least make their own choice. I think that's the thing, because we can't give it like one of the speakers said, if you are not 30-year-old, you should not be getting married. Well, I got married at the age of 29. I've been married for over 10 years now, and it's one of the best. I cannot imagine doing something else. It's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Do you understand? So I think at the end of the day, the question should be choice. Men should we should take a chill pill and allow women to determine what they want to do with their life. I think that's the most important thing here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution, Mr. Omoni Salami. It was very insightful. And we have one more person, Folorisho Makinde. You're raising your hand. You want to say something too before we round up? We are running over with almost 15 minutes now. We should round up this discussion. It's been interesting, and I'm so glad we are having it. Mr. Folorisho Makinde, you want to say something? Okay, it doesn't seem as if Mr. Makinde is available to talk. Thank you very much, our last contributor, Omoni Salami. It was a very insightful remark you made, and I hope the men will listen to you. And I could see Dr. Paul Agbo laughing at the background. Could you tell us what was funny, Dr. Paul Agbo?
Well, it was the passion with which the last speaker spoke. You know, men don't know women the way we think we do. And that's as simple as it sounds, as naive as it sounds. That's the truth. But before we get to the point where we would ask them, there's a question a woman, the penultimate person asks, what can we do? You know, when you're talking about this, there are so many correlates. And one of the good things, I don't know who started it, you know, this school feeding program, if the government were, because one of the drivers of child marriages, early marriages, is poverty. We've said it. If there was a way where the government, in addition to feeding the children in school, would have a token for every family that sends their girl child to school, I am telling you that you have a lot of people sending their girl child to school than giving them out in marriage. So it's just about coming out with innovative ideas. If for every child you send to school, some people now send their children to school because they'll get fed. Not necessarily because they want the children to get a good education, but they know that when the children are in school, they'll eat food. So now, can the government decide? And even though we don't want to say it's a Nigerian problem, is it Meyaki was talking and said it's a global thing. It is peculiar to some regions. It's not a global thing. Even though you have it in almost all regions, it is fantastic in Latin America, Northeast Asia, and Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. These are the hotspots for early child marriages. And if you see the common denominator, poverty. So can the government, in addition to school feeding program, say that every child, every family that sends a girl child to school, you will have a stipend at the end of the month? I'm thinking that it would help. Know that in Nigeria, the Northwest has the highest, based on the UNDP survey that was done in 2008. But now, because of the crisis we're having in the Northeast, I think that you are going to, if there was a survey that was done there now, you'd see a lot of child marriages, a lot of all these abnormalities going on there. If there is a program, you pay. You know, they are paying people for repentant
Boko Haram terrorists.
Boko Haram terrorists, repentant Niger Delta militants, repentant kidnappers. Can the government decide that this is an important issue and say, okay, for every family that sends, we'll give you a stipend at the end of the month? Can they do that? We have the resources, but will they consider it a serious enough matter to have this kind of program? And I'm sure that you have more parents send their children to school because there will be stipend at the end of the month, rather than give them out in marriage and no stipend comes in. So that's in answer to the person who asks, what can we do? Second thing we can do is talk about it, talk about it, talk about it, until serious legislation and enforcement of legislation is begun and undertaken. That's the second thing we can do. The third thing we can do is community participation, buy-in. Can we carry these messages? I was in Gombe sometime last year to talk about drug abuse, and we invited traditional rulers, imams and pastors, and I was surprised at how interested they were when they realized there was a problem on the ground. Can we also carry this discussion to, somebody talked about the Emir of Kano, can we also ask these prominent personalities to talk about this matter? I know that the former Emir was really passionate about this. I don't know about the current one. So let's talk about it and get personalities to buy into this. Those are some of the things I think would help this discussion moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abu. Ahmed Meyaki is brimming to say a thing or two in response to what Dr. Abu said, but I'm going to be a little bit selfish here. Ahmed, you have to hang on for me. I have two questions that I penned down for Halima Wali after her presentation earlier on. So Halima Wali, while you were presenting earlier on, you talked about two issues. One, the first issue you talked about was the indicators of preparedness for marriage, which we sometimes tend to overlook. You mentioned that physical maturity is not the only excuse me, I'm stuck for word. Physical maturity is not the only indicator for marriage readiness. Can you tell us what are the other indicators for marriage readiness amongst young people, especially the girl child, Halima?
I think it's, and a lot of the presenters and also almost everyone who commented has said it, it's about the mental readiness. Are you ready mentally? Are you there psychologically? You know, and I will go back to the title you gave. Are you a woman that is trying to do, are you a girl that is trying to do a woman's job? You cannot give what you do not have. So if you're not there, if you're not there mentally in that space to know what you're supposed to do at the time you get married, what it takes to be married, what it takes to manage your home, manage children, grow the next generation, and leave a legacy, then I don't think you're ready to be married. And it's a process, because I wouldn't say at one point or a particular age you're wholly ready, but there's a starting point and it's different for people. Someone mentioned that you can be maybe 15 years old and extremely mature. That I'm not advocating for 15-year-olds to get married, far from it, you know, but you can also be 30, 35, 45 and still be a fool. They say a fool at 40 is a fool forever. That's also not general, you know, but I'm just trying to establish that it has nothing to do with your age. It just has to do with your mental capacity. And I agree with one of the speakers, sorry, I don't remember who that said, it's a matter of choice. You should be able to choose at the time you're ready, so that whatever happens, you're willing to put in all that effort to make things work. And if it doesn't work, then fine, you have nobody, you don't cast blame on people and say, oh, if, you know, they did this to me, they did that to me. After all, I said I wasn't ready. After all, I wasn't given a choice. You just, you know, take what it is and move on with your life. So that's, in a nutshell, I think it's the mental readiness that's the most important aspect, psychologically.
So, but that is not something that is visible. That is not something that we can determine by mere appearances. Mental maturity, mental readiness, it's not something a lot of people can decipher and understand. How do we know a person is mentally ready? What we are stuck with right now as a society is the physical readiness. The moment a girl has a bum and breast, she's ready. But now we are trying to say, no, there are many other indicators. And not many people even understand that there are other indicators. Then how do we educate them on the mental readiness? What do we tell them are the indicators that a girl is mentally ready for marriage?
I think this all boils down to the parents. And there's a riddle that says, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, you know? So I think it all boils down to the parents. As a parent, you're responsible for your child before the age of maturity. You know what this child is capable of. You understand the child's psyche. And then in this case, it's now the case of, is the parent educated enough to understand these developmental milestones that the child is going through, or is the parent not aware of these things? So normally an educated parent would be able to assess their child, for example. You know,
so just let me interject you. I'm doing something I have cautioned other people against. How do you expect a parent that is not educated to understand these things?
That is the challenge, and that's why I said the chicken or the egg.
That is the challenge, exactly.
Which comes first? The chicken or the egg?
An uneducated parent cannot know this.
That is the challenge.
And a parent that has not been able to go through that process themselves will not be able to understand this.
Exactly. So, see, and that's your point.
Exactly, that's my point. We invariably just unconsciously keep repeating the same patterns over and over again, using cultural and sometimes religious reasons as excuses.
Exactly. So we have to start from somewhere.
Absolutely.
We have to start from somewhere. Yes, we have a large percentage of women that are not educated, but we have to start from somewhere. Little steps, baby steps, educate our girls, and hopefully in a number of years, you know, whether we're here or not, at least we've planted the seeds for a future of women that are able, that are competent, you know, in their personal lives, in their children's lives, in their family lives, in community lives, in national life. I think that is the goal. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you very much. And your last question. So you mentioned some of the ways that young people are being prepared for marriage through marital counseling, which is
I think that
much
was
more.
Ramatu.
Okay, it was Ramatu.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought it was you. Which is much more prevalent in the Christian community, where they attend. They call it premarital counseling. So the question is for you as an educationist. What is the duration of time that you think is enough for someone to learn how to be married? Because I don't remember being taught anything about marriage when I was in school. We don't teach anything about marriage in primary and secondary school, and yet we use secondary school as a yardstick for a girl to be married. The moment she finishes secondary school, boom, she's okay, she can go, she can get married. Meanwhile, she did not learn anything about marriage in school. So let's assume she's going to go through marital counseling. What do you think is the requisite amount of time that she should be in counseling, or they should be in counseling, including the man, including the groom, because he didn't learn anything about marriage as well? So what do you think, as an educationist, as a teacher, how long do you think it will be required for people to be in marital counseling classes before they are fit to be married?
I don't think there's a length of time. It's just like learning. We're all lifelong learners. For as long as we're alive, we're always learning. So you could say, for example, let's say in a church or a mosque, we do maybe 3 months marriage counseling. That is just the foundation. You know, the couple are always learning, they're growing, they're learning new things. So I think, I don't know if, the doctor will maybe expatiate on this, but it's a seed, it's a foundation, but people need to learn and grow. And as they learn and grow, they need to seek out avenues of knowledge. So I can't say, for example, I completed a 5-year course, let's say on marital counseling, and men, I'm the most successful married person there is to see. That is not even feasible. It's just like, it's a lifelong process. So you can only start, but you keep learning, you make your mistakes, you go back again, you seek counsel, you come back, try again. That's in my own opinion.
Absolutely right. Thank you very much. Will Dr. Polabo, do you have anything to say? I think
yes,
I can hear you
I really, yes, I like the way Mrs. Halima has summarized it. There's no limit to putting a time limit. I think defeats the entire purpose. But it boils back goes back to that issue of mental age and decision making. Because if you've made a choice, you put in your all to make it work. I know that in some churches, 6 months counseling, but for some people it doesn't work. After all the 6 months counseling, they still break up. Do you get? For some people, 3 months counseling works. So it's all about the mental age and the fact that it was my choice.
Mental preparedness and choice.
Yes, mental preparedness. When somebody has decided that it's my choice, I want to make it work, one day counseling may just be all they need. But you mentioned the point that it's very, very important. I don't think in civic education in schools, which is what I feel is the closest to having this kind of topic, they talk about marriages. They just tell you the structure of marriage, father, mother, but they don't tell you what it entails. I think we've left it to the religious people to talk about. And the truth of the matter is, many of these religious people are ill-equipped to tell us about the dynamics of marriage as it is now. Their version of marriage is how it used to be. If they say you say
Yes,
you say So how can you now counsel people who have outgrown their parents in everything? And we must, I think one of the things you said is, let's create an avenue for discussion. The same way they are talking about sex education in schools, let's start talking about marriages in schools. Maybe it will help. That's my take on the matter.
Thank you very much. Ahmed Mayaki and Khadija Jibril, I'll give you 2 minutes each. We've been here for 2 hours. This conversation is just amazing. Thank you very much to everyone that's been here. Khadija Jibril, what do you want to say? Hello, Khadija Jibril, you still have your hand raised and you're not responding.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. Sorry, my camera has a problem, so I may not be able to show my picture, my face now. For the want of time, we want to align with Dr. Agbo and every other speaker in condemning child marriage and also discouraging early marriage. You know, we've been able to differentiate between the two. There's child marriage and there's early marriage, and I actually recognize one other sister of ours that mentioned up to 30, as in married before 30, that's still early marriage because you're not matured enough. You see, if we really want to make a headway, I want to be quite brief about this. Moving forward, we really have to address the fears of those people that are holding on so seriously to the cultural and the religious, reasons behind all this. You can imagine in a family that, okay, let's say a family of 2 children and one of the daughters got married at maybe 17-year-old and she continues her life, no problem. And this other, except for the mental health that she has, she probably couldn't do a lot for the baby and all that. And this other one, from one relationship to other, to another, that's another mental health issue. Many of them would have been jilted from moving from one place to the other. We're still talking about pelvic infection. Many of the relationships these days are actually not healthy. From one time or the other, you would have, acquired one thing or the other that would jeopardize your reproductive life, later in life. We're still talking about a country whose abortion laws are not, are still restrictive. You understand? They've not been liberalized. So even if they run into trouble, they still have to go under the bridge to sort out their problems. There's abortion and it's a huge problem. So I would like a situation where we do this study and compare the mortality and the health, the mental health issues associated with early marriage. Nobody's talking about child marriage. That one is, should be kicked out completely. But I know people will argue about early marriage. So the problems with early marriage as compared with the problems that can arise when you don't get, married in time. By the time you compare these two, you'll be able to know clearly how huge this other problem is. And whenever you're talking to these people, the thing, you will go there by convincing and letting them know, you realize these are the problems and these are the possible solutions. You understand? So whatever we are talking about now, we should also be supporting things about how to get their problem sorted out in case they get into the problem. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So both sides, there are mental issues I've had, I've interacted with people that are married after the age of 30 years. And then because of the number of guilt and terrible influence of the relationships in the past, they still have that mental issue even up as at now. In addition to reproductive career that must have, that may have been jeopardized while waiting. Because we know these are reproductive season is a natural thing. You will feel like trying some things and so many other things. And what these other culturalists or religious hardliners are talking about is that, okay, God created you with all these feelings. And at a particular point in time, you will want to test some things. Why not test it in a safer way? You understand? Those are the reasons behind that. I understand what we are trying to put forth, but we should be ready to answer all these questions also. And we should be ready to support so many other things that will, help sort out these other problems for them in order for them to listen to us properly. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Thank you for that contribution, Khadija Jibril. We appreciate your contribution to the conversation. And Ahmed Mayaki, I am so sorry I will not be able to give you any time because we've been here for 2 hours, and it's such an amazing honor that all the 20 people we started this discussion with are still here. We don't want to keep anyone longer than necessary. If you have any question, I will share the social media contacts of all our speakers to everyone who has been here. If you have any question to any one of them, you can contact them directly through any of their social media handles so that you may get your questions answered. Thank you so very much for this engaging, robust, and enriching conversation. Halima Wali, Ramatu Umar Bako, Mala Yusha Shaibu, and Dr. Paul Abu, we're very, very grateful for your presence and for your wealth of knowledge which you have shared with us towards trying to find lasting solutions to some of the beguiling problems of our society. We appreciate you. I only wish we could spend more time talking about this, but I know that's not possible.
Just quickly, a point of information, please.
Okay.
Raising hand.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Paul actually, in part of the solutions he raised was the issue of getting government through the school feeding to provide some stipends for.
That's just a suggestion he gave.
Yes, I just want to give an information. UNICEF already is partnering with some states in Nigeria, particularly in northern Nigeria, and is giving out stipends to parents whose children go hawking or who get married, because one of the early pointers to early marriage is the issue of poverty. So UNICEF is working with, I know Niger State, with Zamfara, with Kebbi, with Sokoto, part of the state, not just in Northwest, but some of the state in North Central, providing 5,000 Naira stipends to the parents of these girls so that they allow them to go to school instead of just saying they want to allow them hawk and get them married for reasons of poverty. This is one information. Secondly, I know if we continue to have this conversation, already in northern Nigeria, it is now an acceptable norm for people to get tested before marriage, which before now, it is not even discussed. So if we continue to have this conversation, I know someday we're going to have a solution. Thank you very much for providing this platform. And then I hope this will happen again. We have so many issues that we can also bring about to discuss. But just making sure that we'll do something differently. And beyond just this conversation in this platform, I will expect as a media expert, we should be able to identify the key issues and bring out communique for the media to discuss this further, rather than just allow this conversation to just end from this Zoom meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mala Ahmed Mayaki, for that contribution. Highly, highly appreciated. I appreciate all of you that have taken out the time to be here. I cannot tell you how much the 2 hours we have spent deliberating on this issue, I cannot tell you how valuable it is. It is invaluable. And it might actually be one of the seeds Halima Wali is talking about that could germinate into the solutions that we all seek. Today is International Women's Day, and the theme of today's talk, Sending a Boy to Do a Man's Job, was deliberate, to incite curiosity and to, on another hand, lay emphasis on the gravity of the kind of mistakes we keep doing by repeating old patterns, and given the most ill-equipped, most unprepared, and most untrained of us the responsibility to do the most important things, which is motherhood and raising the young generation. I hope we're able to take this back to our respective cycles, to our respective communities, and continue the conversation henceforth. Because as Mala Ahmed Meyaki said, we must continue to talk. As Dr. Paul Abo said, we must continue to talk. So this discussion should go beyond Zoom and our computers. Thank you very much. We appreciate everyone that's been here. Have a lovely day. And I hope you have all been enriched in very many different ways. I have been enriched. I have been enlightened. I am leaving this meeting wiser and more enlightened than I was. And I hope it is the same for everyone here. Have a lovely evening. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Child marriage, but nothing wrong with anybody.
Bye.
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 Dr. Paul, I'm saying Dr. Paul.
Early marriage at the age of 30 years.
Dr. Paul, I'm going. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you, Madam Yusho.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.